The restaurant was bustling with the chaos of the lunch rush. Waiters rushed between tables, customers placed orders hastily, and the clatter of dishes and kitchen chatter filled the space. But in the midst of all this noise, Donald Trump focused on a single voice. At the counter, a young black waitress stood with a nervous expression, speaking to a particularly irate customer. "Listen here, little lady, you've messed up my order twice. Don't you understand? They gave you the simplest job, and you still can't do it right." The man rolled up his sleeves and slammed his hand on the table. A few diners lifted their heads, sensing the growing tension. The waitress's hands trembled. She had only just started this job and was doing her best. But this man, he wasn't giving her a chance. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll fix it right away." But the man's eyes narrowed with anger. "Fix it? No, go get your manager. I want to hear that you've been fired." The color drained from the waitress's face. Even the kitchen staff froze at the words. But the biggest silence of all was at Trump's table. Donald Trump set his coffee cup down, his sharp gaze locking onto the young girl. Then he shifted his attention to the man in front of her. The customer leaned back in his chair smugly, raising his voice so the entire restaurant could hear. "Some people just aren't cut out for even the simplest tasks, and this girl, she's one of them." Just then, Trump pushed his chair back slightly and stood up. A few customers glanced over, sensing that something was about to happen. The man was mid-sentence when Trump, with slow, deliberate steps, walked toward the table. Silence. Every eye in the restaurant was on him. And in that moment, Trump was about to say something that would change the entire atmosphere. Sometimes some people have no idea who they're talking to. At first, the man looked startled, but when he realized it was Donald Trump standing in front of him, his expression shifted to indifference. "Well, look at that. Celebrities are eating here now? Why are you getting involved?" Trump slid his hands into his pockets and tilted his head slightly, studying the man before him. "I'm getting involved because I don't like watching injustice." A murmur rippled through the restaurant. People leaned in slightly, eager to see how Trump would handle the situation. The man narrowed his eyes and let out a condescending laugh. "This is between me and her. Mind your own business." Trump shook his head slowly. "No, this isn't just between you and her. This is happening in front of everyone. And what you're doing is disgraceful." The customer shifted uncomfortably, but Trump's tone became even firmer. "People like you are all the same. You get a little bit of power, and instead of using it to help, you use it to tear others down." The man shot up from his chair, his face red with frustration. "What, do you know her or something? Are you standing up for her because you have some kind of agenda? Are you just another one of those guys defending people like her?" The room fell into an eerie stillness. The waitress's eyes widened. Diners exchanged glances, uncertain of what would happen next. But Trump's face remained unchanged. His gaze bore into the man's, unwavering. "I don't know this girl." The man smirked, crossing his arms. "Then why are you sticking your nose in this?" Trump took a step closer. "Because a long time ago, I knew someone just like her." And in that moment, Trump was about to reveal a truth that no one expected. The restaurant had fallen into complete silence. Everyone was holding their breath. Trump's gaze drifted to a distant point, as if he was no longer in the present. His mind had been pulled back, years into the past, to a different time and place. "When I was a kid, my father ran a small hotel. There was a waiter there, a young boy. He worked hard every single day, always trying his best. But people, they never truly saw him." Trump's voice was slow and reflective, as if he was reliving the moment. "That boy loved his job. He was dedicated, respectful, honest. But people like you," he turned his sharp eyes back to the man, laughed at him because he was young, because he was inexperienced, because he was black. His words echoed through the restaurant. Up until now, this had seemed like nothing more than a minor dispute, but now it had become something much bigger. The young waitress couldn't hold back her tears. Her hands trembled. In that moment, she saw herself reflected in Trump's words. Trump looked at her and offered a faint smile, one that carried a deep sadness. "Do you know what happened to that boy?" No one answered. The silence was thick. "He worked. For years. He never gave up. And one day, he became the owner of that very hotel." Shocked expressions turned toward Trump. No one had expected that. The customer scoffed, clearing his throat before letting out a dry laugh. "That's just some made-up story." But Trump slowly shook his head. "Number that boy was my closest friend, and people like you made him believe he would never make it." The man's smug expression faltered. He was told over and over again that he wasn't good enough, that he'd never succeed. Trump took a deep breath, his voice softening slightly. "One day, I found him sitting on the kitchen floor of that hotel, his eyes filled with tears. He looked up at me and said, 'No matter what I do, I'll never be enough.'" Trump lifted his head and locked eyes with the waitress. "And today, that's exactly how you feel, isn't it?" Her lips quivered, tears streamed down her cheeks. Those words had touched something deep inside her, a fear she had never been able to voice. The customer leaned back uncomfortably, avoiding Trump's gaze. He could no longer dismiss the weight of the moment. "So what? What's your point? Are we supposed to praise her for messing up? This isn't about race." Trump's face grew even more serious. "People like you never give second chances to those you believe are beneath you, because the truth is, you never actually see them as worth trying." The man rolled his eyes. "This is just about a botched order. You're making this into something bigger than it is." Trump exhaled slowly. Then, turning back to the waitress, he spoke gently. "But for you, this is about much more than an order, isn't it?" The young woman wiped her tears, but she couldn't speak, because Trump was right. This was all she had ever known. But he never gave up. And in that moment, the way people looked at Trump changed. No one spoke, but everyone was thinking. For the first time, a deep awareness had settled into the restaurant. But this wasn't over yet, because what Trump was about to do next was just beginning. The customer was fuming, but the tide had turned against him. Trump turned to the young waitress. "How old are you?" 20. "What do you want to be?" The waitress took a deep breath. "I want to own my own restaurant." Trump smiled. "Then remember this. What happened today isn't the end of your journey. It's just the beginning." Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out a business card, and placed it in her hand. "Call me." The waitress stared at the card in disbelief. Meanwhile, the frustrated customer grabbed his bag and stormed out of the restaurant, his face red with anger. And then something unexpected happened. The entire restaurant erupted into applause. But the biggest surprise was yet to come. 1 week later, as she stepped into the restaurant, the young waitress's eyes shone with excitement. This was no longer just a job, it was a new beginning. Trump stood beside her, offering a knowing smile. "Success isn't luck. It's about working hard and never giving up." She nodded, her eyes filled with emotion. For the first time, she felt like she belonged. As the days passed, she gained confidence and purpose. When she received her first paycheck, she held it in disbelief. This was hers, earned through her own effort. One day, Trump returned, watching as she managed orders with ease. A proud smile crossed his face. "I told you something. Remember? Never give up." Trump nodded. "And one day, you'll give someone else this same chance." In that moment, she knew. Her journey wasn't just about herself anymore. Once again, Trump had proven that one person could change the world.